What happens when you combine unlimited ego, corporate greed, and the kind of power that can literally rewrite the rules of an entire sport? You get Ferrari, a brand so twisted and corrupt that they've spent decades convincing the world their evil is actually excellence. This isn't just another racing story, folks. This is the exposé of how the most beloved name in motorsport became the most sinister force in racing history. Ferrari wasn't just evil. They were the devil himself, wrapped in Italian leather and painted Rosso Corsa. This is how Ferrari became not just a racing team, but a kingdom built on blood, manipulation, and the kind of corporate evil that makes your skin crawl. Buckle up, folks, because today we're diving into the dark heart of the prancing horse. Enzo Ferrari wasn't just a car builder. He was a cult leader operating out of Maranello, and his religion was winning at any cost. Ferrari wasn't a company in the traditional sense. It was a kingdom where drivers were pawns, loyalty was mandatory, and death? Well, death was just part of the price of perfection. The car is perfect. The driver? Replaceable. This wasn't just Enzo's philosophy. It was his operating manual. He genuinely believed that his machines were works of art, while the men who risked their lives to drive them were nothing more than interchangeable components. When drivers died, and they died frequently, Enzo's response was always the same: cold indifference masked as stoic professionalism. But here's the truly sinister part. Enzo deliberately kept his drivers emotionally isolated. After losing friends like Giuseppe Campari and Alberto Ascari, he made a conscious decision to never get close to his drivers again. It wasn't about protecting himself from grief. It was about maintaining the psychological distance necessary to treat human beings as expendable resources. You don't become Ferrari without blood in the oil pan. And brother, was there blood? The body count from Ferrari's golden years reads like a war memorial. During the late 1950s and 1960s, 7 Ferrari drivers were killed. Alberto Ascari, Eugenio Castellotti, Alfonso de Portago, Luigi Musso, Peter Collins, Wolfgang von Trips, and Lorenzo Bandini. 7 men, all dead, all driving for the same team. Even by the brutal standards of the 1950s and 1960s racing, this death toll was staggering. The most horrifying example came during the 1957 Mille Miglia, when Alfonso de Portago's Ferrari 335S was traveling at 160 miles per hour when it blew a tire and crashed into a crowd of spectators. The carnage was unimaginable. De Portago died, his co-driver died, and 9 innocent spectators, including 5 children, were killed. And Ferrari's response? They fought the manslaughter charges in court for 4 years before finally getting them dismissed. But here's what really shows you Ferrari's true nature. They had the technology to prevent these deaths. They could have used safer tire compounds, better fuel tank designs, and improved safety equipment. Instead, they chose to ship cars they knew were death traps because fixing the problems would have cost money and added weight. Every single death was preventable, and Ferrari knew it. This is where Ferrari's evil truly evolved from simple corporate negligence into systematic corruption. The phrase, Ferrari International Assistance, didn't become a meme by accident. It became shorthand for one of the most blatant examples of regulatory capture in sports history. Ferrari became so powerful within Formula One that it effectively controlled the rule-making process. When Ferrari complained about regulations, the rules mysteriously changed. When Ferrari wanted clarification on technical issues, the FIA would bend over backwards to accommodate them. Other teams knew the score. If Ferrari wasn't happy, the sport would suffer. The most egregious example, the secret 2019 fuel flow scandal settlement. Ferrari was caught red-handed using an illegal engine system that allowed them to bypass fuel flow sensors and gain massive power advantages. When the FIA investigated, what did they find? A smoking gun that should have resulted in race bans, championship disqualifications, and massive fines. Instead, Ferrari got a secret settlement. The FIA literally said, "We've reached an agreement with Ferrari, but we're not telling anyone what it is." When the other 7 teams demanded transparency, they were told to pound sand. Ferrari's 2020 performance mysteriously plummeted after the settlement, proving they had indeed been cheating. But by then it was too late. They'd already stolen victories and championship points through illegal means. Nothing, and I mean nothing, captures Ferrari's evil quite like what they did to Rubens Barrichello at the 2002 Austrian Grand Prix. Picture this. Barrichello had dominated the entire weekend, earned pole position, and was leading the race comfortably. With just meters to go before the finish line, Ferrari ordered him to let Michael Schumacher pass for the victory. But here's the truly sick part. When Barrichello initially refused to comply, Ferrari made threats. Not about his contract, that would have been bad enough. No, they made threats about something much broader, something that made Barrichello fear for his future in the sport entirely. As he later revealed, it was a form of threat that made me think about rethinking my life. In front of millions of viewers, Barrichello did something no man should ever have to do. He lifted his foot off the accelerator just yards from victory and handed the win to his teammate. The crowd booed. The drivers looked disgusted. Even Schumacher seemed uncomfortable, but Ferrari? They were perfectly happy to humiliate their own driver in front of the world to serve their twisted agenda. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was standard operation. Ferrari demanded loyalty that went beyond professionalism into the realm of psychological abuse. They would destroy careers, manipulate contracts, and use every dirty trick in the book to maintain their stranglehold on power. Here's the most twisted part of Ferrari's evil. They didn't need enemies to destroy them because they were experts at cannibalizing their own. The internal politics at Ferrari were so toxic that they regularly sabotaged their own chances of success. Look at what they did to Alain Prost in 1991, after Prost dared to call the Ferrari 641 a truck, which, let's be honest, it was. Ferrari fired him before the season even ended. They literally paid him to not race rather than admit their car was flawed. That's not just petty, that's pathologically vindictive. The Sebastian Vettel situation was even more sinister. Ferrari spent years building Vettel up as their chosen one, then systematically destroyed his confidence through strategic incompetence, bad strategy calls, mechanical failures at crucial moments, and a complete lack of support when he needed it most. By the time Vettel finally escaped to Aston Martin, he was a broken man. You didn't own a Ferrari. You were granted permission to buy one. This wasn't a car company. It was an elite blood cult with aluminum body panels and a genius marketing department. The most insidious part was how Ferrari convinced everyone that their cruelty was actually passion. When drivers died, it wasn't because of Ferrari's negligence. It was because of their uncompromising pursuit of perfection. When they cheated, it wasn't because they were corrupt. It was because they were innovative. When they destroyed careers, it wasn't because they were evil. It was because they demanded excellence. Occasionally, someone would fight back against the Ferrari machine, and when they did, the results were telling. Niki Lauda demanded control over his own destiny and nearly died for it at the Nürburgring. Michael Schumacher managed to tame the beast, but only by becoming more ruthless than Ferrari itself. But here's the key. Ferrari always reverted to chaos. Even when they had the best drivers, the best cars, and the best resources, their internal dysfunction would eventually reassert itself. The most telling example? Look at their current struggles. Despite having Charles Leclerc, one of the most talented drivers on the grid, Ferrari continues to sabotage itself with strategic blunders, technical failures, and the same toxic culture that has defined them for decades. The names change, but the evil remains. Here's the ultimate proof of Ferrari's evil. Despite everything, the deaths, the cheating, the corruption, the psychological abuse, they're still the most revered name in racing. They've managed to turn their victims into worshippers, their crimes into folklore, and their evil into a brand that people literally die to be associated with. Ego and power, as they say, are nature's anesthetic for the pain of being wrong. Ferrari didn't just build fast cars. They built a machine that consumed souls, destroyed lives, and corrupted an entire sport. They proved that evil doesn't always wear horns and breathe fire. They say the devil drives a red car, but in Maranello, he built it.